President Trump playing the role of consoler-in-chief there during today's visits to El Paso and to Dayton, meeting with survivors, victims' families, and first responders after two mass shootings this weekend took the lives of at least 31 people. All of this as momentum builds around so-called red flag gun laws that allow courts to intervene and temporarily remove guns from people who pose an imminent danger to themselves or to others. The president says he's working on it. Watch him here just moments ago, actually, in El Paso, Texas.
Let's see if we can get something done. And Republicans want to do it and Democrats want to do it.
Yeah, they do. Maybe. I don't know about that. Because here's the problem. This president has an absolutely inept Congress. It's very clear Congress is repeatedly failing us, whether it be on immigration, whether it be on trade, whether it be on health care, or whether it be on guns. You take your pick. Congress isn't fighting for their constituents. These people, these politicians, they're not fighting for you and me. They're fighting for lobbying money. Whether it be money from big corporations that want to be in the Chinese marketplace, whether it be big pharma that wants higher drug prices, or whether it be the NRA and gun companies that want to convince you that a ban on assault weapons or having more vigilant background checks would mean you would be stripped of your Second Amendment right. Not true. Americans would still have the right to keep and bear arms in their homes to protect themselves. One qualifier I'll just mention here, better background checks. They may not do a thing to stem these mass killings. If you're that filled with hate, there are plenty of ways to do damage that don't involve guns. Without a doubt, we need a better system to identify mental health problems. This is a multi-pronged approach, but common sense tells you if someone has a kill list, they shouldn't have access to a gun, should they? In poll after poll after poll, the vast majority of Americans, they say we need better background checks. So why the heck don't we have them? America has moved on this issue. You know that? Look at that number right there. America has moved on this issue. So why the heck hasn't Congress? Joining me right now, presidential historian Doug Wead and attorney Misty Morris, as well as former New York Congresswoman Independent Women's Forum board member Nan Hayworth. Good to have all of you here. Doug, you know, the president says that Congress hasn't really done anything for the last 30 years. He's absolutely right on that front. When it comes to gun legislation, they're really asleep at the switch. Americans don't feel the way Congress does. Why aren't they doing anything?
Yeah, it's interesting, Trish. Some people think that because it took Richard Nixon to open China, it might take Donald Trump. He's fearless, he's gutsy, to try to force Congress to come together and do something on gun laws that would make a difference. We'll see if that happens.
Well, he's talking about it. I mean, it could, but, you know, in the meantime, you got the NRA, Nan, out there, you know, dangling all this money to these people that just want to get reelected. How do they separate that, you know, the threat of the NRA cutting off funding and, you know, disengaging them, et cetera, from what they need to do for the country that's right at this moment in time, given all that's happened? And again, I'm not saying that this is going to fix anything, but it seems to me that it's just that common sense kind of thing. The person with the kill list doesn't deserve access to a gun.
Yeah,
well,
I think you're right about that. I'm a lifetime member of the NRA, but I have to say, as a historian, things have changed since the Constitution was written. I think Google, Facebook, and Wikipedia pose a greater threat to American freedoms, and you can't grab a gun out of the closet to do anything about it. It's very much a different world.
Okay, so funding from the NRA, how's that affecting things, Nan?
Well, look, the NRA is definitely a powerful lobby, but it's a powerful lobby, Trish, for a reason, because Americans take their Bill of Rights very seriously. And we have a challenge in terms of both First Amendment and Second Amendment rights when it comes to tackling this problem. And I agree completely with you that our goal clearly is to prevent criminals from having from possessing weapons that can kill.
Like that should just be something that we all kind of say. Yeah,
that's right.
You know, and the better background checks as well, like to make sure that the criminals don't get them. And the idea that you've got assault weapons out there as well. I mean, look, you know, the Second Amendment says you have the right to bear arms and to keep these arms in your home. But you know, what exactly are arms or assault weapons? I mean, if you. You know, how do you, well, let me ask the lawyer here on the panel, how do you interpret this from, you know, we want to be true to our Constitution and our founding fathers, but, you know, obviously very different time.
Absolutely. And I think that in the wake of this tragedy that we just saw, something needs to be done. So certainly these tighter restrictions, tighter background checks. Nobody wants to sit here in a political stalemate without any action being taken by Congress when you're talking about this terrible tragedy.
Right. And unfortunately, I mean, people are saying, you know, there may not be the political will. How can there not be the political will? I mean, at what point will there be some political will?
Right.
Why isn't there that?
Isn't the political will coming from the American people? And those numbers that you just showed, Trish, show that Americans want to be safer. They want to feel safer. They want stricter background checks, red flag laws, as you spoke about in your opening statement. That's really important, because that may give the ability, if there's somebody who poses an imminent threat, a friend or a family member or a teacher who sees this person day in and day out, can bring that information to authorities and potentially prevent tragedy.
And this is
with
what Donald
rapid
Trump
adjudication
is talking
due
about.
process.
This is what the president is talking about right now. And, you know, I want to go back to this sort of idea of a Nixon in China moment, because you said it may take Donald Trump to actually get any kind of meaningful reform through here on this. Doug, what would that look like? I mean, do you think he personally feels strongly enough about this at this point to really get out in front of the issue, whether it be red flag or other things, because he has the potential to really change the landscape?
Yeah, I think he does. You and I have both interviewed him, and the one thing that's striking is he's so fearless. He's gutsy. He'll do what he thinks is right, even if everybody lined up around the Resolute desk in the Oval Office disagrees with him. And this is the sort of thing I could see him possibly taking leadership. I mean, the Second Amendment was to protect us from tyranny, and principally the tyranny of our own government. But
well, that's,
the Pentagon
that's very
is
true.
not
and
the
James
threat.
Madison wrote about that in the Federalist Papers, right? The whole idea here was that if states had the ability to organize a militia, that they could protect themselves against the federal government. I'm sure California would like to do that these days, since they hate the president so much, right? But now we're living in a world where, you know, you and 10,000 of your friends are not exactly going to take on the U.S. government unless, Doug, you go out and vote. Right? I mean,
yeah,
and if you ask me, that was the, you know, sending Donald Trump to the White House was the equivalent sort of Americans taking up arms and saying, I'm sick of it. I'm tired of the swamp. I want someone who can actually be a change agent and do what they think is right, as opposed to what the lobbying money is telling them they should do. Doug.
You're right. You're right. And I go back to the point that the Pentagon is not the enemy right now. It has been at times maybe, but me and my gun are not going to take on cruise missiles and Apache helicopters. At this point, the greatest threat, in my opinion, to American freedom is big tech, and that's got to be solved too.
For sure. For sure. And Google and Facebook and the rest of them, that's another story, and one we have been covering and we're going to continue to cover here on this show. I agree with you. They're a big problem, but we'll see what happens on this front. I think that the president feels strongly that there's got to be some changes, and red flag may be the way to go. Doug, Misty, Nan, thank you so much. Good to see you all.
Thanks, Trish.
Coming up, everyone, Chaos and Panic in Times Square Tuesday evening. Watch.